Welcome to Stories of Art. I'm James Fox.
And I'm Alistair Sook.
Not long after the beginning of time, God soars through a primeval sky. Wind rippling through his white beard, he descends towards a human figure slumped lifelessly on a patch of grass. Slowly, but certainly, the Lord outstretches his right hand, and rousing from his slumber, the human reaches out to touch it. Their hands get closer, closer still, their fingers on the cusp of touching, the spark of life about to pass from one to the other. Now that, Alistair, is my description
I can guess what this one is.
of the creation of Adam, the most famous image on the Sistine Chapel ceiling and one of the defining images of Western culture. It was painted in Rome just over 500 years ago at the peak of the High Renaissance by the Florentine artist Michelangelo. And he is the subject of this, our latest and so far longest series. But before we start, I just need to let listeners in on a little bit of a secret. I have been trying to do Michelangelo from the very beginning.
It is true.
The guy sitting on the other side of the table has been doing his best to wriggle out of it.
I know. No, wriggle is a bit harsh, but no, you're right, James. This is the big one, and I can attest you have indeed been suggesting this since the very start when we were discussing this last year. And I think I should confess, I did feel ever so slightly daunted.
Yeah.
Because, he is so important. He's the capstone, the chief creator of the High Renaissance.
He's the big dog.
He's the big dog. And, I mean, even in his lifetime, right, he's known as Il Divino, the divine one. I had a little look, just because I think we're doing something so classic. I went back to one of the classics, Civilization by Kenneth Clark.
Yeah.
Opened this brilliant chapter, I think, what's it called? The Artist's Hero, the Heroic Artist, something like that. Talks about Michelangelo in that. And he refers to his famous marble David and the head containing this spiritual force that the ancient world never knew. And we must reckon the emergence of Michelangelo as one of the great events in the history of Western man.
Wow. I think that's an understatement, actually. Okay. No, I do think, I'm going to put it out there. I think one of the reasons I've been desperate to do him is I think he is the greatest artist in history, at least Western history. I think there is no comparison. And I think for multiple reasons. I mean, first of all, the originality of his work, the ambition of his work, as we shall see over the subsequent episodes, there's nothing to compare. Mm-hmm. Second, he excels, unlike many artists, across many disciplines. Great sculptor, great painter, great architect, great draftsman, pretty good poet, as we may see later on in the series.
Is it interesting?
He's a good poet as well. Longevity. I mean, Michelangelo makes his first good works in the 1490s. He makes his last great works on the final days of his life in the 1560s. So his career, Alistair, spans 70 years, when the life expectancy of an Italian is 35 years. And the final thing I think makes him such a great artist is he's got X factor. The greatest of his works, if you stand at the base of David and you gaze up at the Sistine Chapel ceiling, it's goosebump territory.
I think what's the word that's often associated with him? Terribilità.
Yes.
Which is a sort of English, you might say awesomeness. That sounds a bit rubbish, but this kind of force of grandeur, this awesome power. And I think maybe that's that sense of charisma. Can I, just for the sake of, we're embarking on a big journey here.
We are.
And perhaps in the course of it, I don't want to reveal anything, but maybe my views may change. But just because I think it might be interesting to play devil's advocate a little bit at the start, I have been trying to work out why I've been slightly, not ambivalent about doing him, but just working out why I was having that response. And perhaps as an art critic, I have an innate contrarian streak. And one of the things that I struggle with Michelangelo is when you read the sources, they are so gushing.
They're fawning.
They're just so fawning and uncritical that after quite quickly you can get a little bit like, oh, come on, he can't be that good, you know. And it's slightly, and it's interesting you talk about his range, because you could argue the converse. You could say that in some ways he's a surprisingly limited artist, because he's obsessed almost exclusively with the expressive power of the heroic male nude. And some people, even his contemporaries, had a problem with that. I think there's one quite hostile contemporary who said something along the lines of, once you've seen one Michelangelo, you've seen them all, which of course is a grotesque slur, but I wondered if there's something there. I also wonder about his personality. He and his work both have the charisma, but in lots of ways, he could be just a complete douche.
I mean, he was an arsehole.
Really not a nice, not a sympathetic character, an amazing character. I mean, a fascinating story. But yes, I'm glad that you put it like that. And last point from me, thinking about why, just this is slightly trying to look back and justify why I had that response. But I wonder too whether his work is so embedded with the Christian church. He's working for the popes, it's in the Vatican. And we have grown up in an age which, okay, things may be changing now, but it's not quite a godless age, but certainly you've seen the decline of Christianity. And I wonder whether on some level, for people like our generation, who belong to our generation, we have a different response to, say, those of Kenneth Clark's generation, partly because of that shift. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I mean, he's remarkable in so many ways. And one of the things you say, we do know a great deal about him. And he's one of the first artists. In fact, he's the first artist we know a great deal about in terms of their life, because, as you suggest, with these fawning accounts, there was not just one official biography effectively in his lifetime, but two biographies written in his lifetime by people who met him. And we also have hundreds of letters and poems written by him. So we have a really clear sense of the personality for the first time in Western art.
I actually love some of the letters.
Yes,
I mean, ahead of this, he has a nephew. I mean, we'll come on to this, I'm sure, but just very briefly. This long-suffering nephew, Leonardo, who seems to bear the brunt of his uncle's, anger, irritation.
Yes.
He's really quite brutal to him often in his letters.
Yeah, Michelangelo, as I will try to persuade you through the course of the next few episodes, I think he is an astonishing artist, but he is also a really annoying guy. I mean, he's money-obsessed, he's morose, he's narcissistic, he's self-obsessed, he falls out with everyone. He's not a pleasant man. But, bad men can be great artists.
This is true. And actually, it's interesting that the sources, you're talking about the two principal biographies. So it's Condivi, right? Ascanio Condivi and Giorgio Vasari.
Vasari writes the first, and Michelangelo wasn't entirely happy with it. So then he sort of commissions Condivi to do the authorised official biography. And that in itself is quite remarkable for an artist, relatively lowly status in the 1500s, that an artist would have an official biography written of them.
So this official one from Condivi is, I think, in the early 1550s, so quite late in his life. I looked up Condivi because he was an artist himself. I think in one of the art dictionaries I consulted, he was dispatched in the first line as his work is unanimously considered mediocre, which is really not how you want to be remembered. So he's principally remembered for this fawning biography of Michelangelo, which then Vasari draws upon, but also reacts against when he releases his later second edition of his Lives of the Artists, which is the foundation of Western art history, really.
Yes, and we will draw on all of these sources and the letters and, to some extent, the poems as well to build this picture. And, in my view, Alistair, Michelangelo is not just the greatest artist in Western history. His life story is astonishing. It really is astonishing. It's full of twists and turns. It's full of feuds and betrayals, triumphs and disasters. And it's people with this thrilling cast of characters in a very tumultuous period of history. So this, then, is the first part in our 4-part series on the life and work of Michelangelo. Our story begins on the 6th of March, 1475, in a tiny Tuscan village called Caprese, which I'm sad to say, and I have done my research, has nothing to do with the salad.
Oh,
I was hoping this could be a
so
great...
disappointing.
I know. I was really hoping
I thought that was going to be the newsworthy revelation of the podcast.
Nothing to do with the salad. So, a few hours before dawn, or a few hours after dusk, we don't know exactly when, a boy called Michelangelo, that's how it was spelled and pronounced at the time, we called him Michelangelo, was born. His family aren't from that village. They're Florentines. And Michelangelo's father, Lodovico, who we'll hear a bit from over the subsequent episodes, he's from quite a noble family, but they've got no money whatsoever.
Right.
And he's a really hapless individual, Michelangelo's father. He's a really useless man. But Lodovico earns his living by being a relatively lowly travelling magistrate, a podesta. So he goes from village to village, resolving disputes just for a short period of time. And a few weeks after Michelangelo's born, only 3 weeks after he's born, the job comes to an end, and the family, so it's the father, the mother, Michelangelo's older brother, about whom we know nothing really, because he goes into the clergy, and the 3-week-old Michelangelo get back onto a horse and they travel back over the hills from Caprese to their home village of Settignano, which is just outside of Florence. I don't know if you've ever been to Settignano. Have you ever been?
I haven't actually, no.
I lost my sunglasses in Settignano. It's a beautiful little village right outside of Florence. I was filming a sequence for the BBC in the cemetery, lovely cemetery there. Took my sunglasses off, put them on the side of the wall, and of course, never saw them again. But in Settignano, that is where the ancestral home of the Buonarroti family, which is Michelangelo's surname, if you like, that's where the ancestral home is. And it's an incredible house.
Can I ask about this lineage? Because one thing that has struck me is that Michelangelo, I don't know about the dad, but he's obsessed with his background, right?
Yes.
So one of the charges you could level against him is that he's a terrible snob.
Real snob.
And in a lot of the sources, seemingly, he cites this. I mean, you've referred already to, what did you use the word noble? This sort of noble lineage, his ancestors. He links his family clan back to the Counts of Canossa, is that right? To a big, important Italian, powerful, noble family from the 10th, 11th century.
Yeah, and there's very little evidence for this whatsoever.
So is it... What's going on? Is he being told that when he's a young boy?
He's told that by his father. So his father, there had been some money a few generations back. The Buonarroti family had been relatively wealthy bankers and merchants in Florence. The money had been lost in the generation or so before Michelangelo's father was born. And so obviously when your family has declined in that way, you cannot understand the motive to sort of cling on to a kind of illustrious past. And so Michelangelo's father is constantly going on about, what they're owed, how fantastic things were in the past. And Michelangelo absorbs this. And it's actually a great motivating force for him in his life. His greatness, his desire to be great, is partly an attempt to rehabilitate the family name.
And he does receive some education, right? I mean, he is learning a bit of Latin.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that. We've got a bit more backstory to do. Right. So they return to the ancestral home when he's still an infant. The house is fantastic. I mean, if you're, for listeners, if you can just imagine the dream Tuscan Airbnb. This is the Buonarroti house. So they have a great house, but no money. It's a stone house. It's got a tower. It's got a loggia. It's surrounded by olive groves and rolling hills. Did I send you the link?
No, you did not.
The house still
You've already booked for this summer, clearly.
The house still exists, and it was sold a few years ago for €8.8 million.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful property. And shortly after arriving back in the village,